All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And greetings all. I know what an incredible week it's been. We've had COVID this week. It has been brutal. We have really been up against some challenges this week, but it has all come together. And what a crescendo to the end of an extraordinary week. And we're right in the thick of a big political campaign, one that has had some twists and turns, unprecedented in American history.
There's never been anything like this.
Well, it's there's some truth to that. And Kim is here,
Kim, how are
of
you?
course. And in place of Albert today, Tony is here.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, which is quite extraordinary. Normally, Tony on the sidelines on Fridays. But Albert is on the road for his birthday. He's doing traveling. So much to talk about. Major new polling news. Obviously, all the polls are tight. But there is a significant shift that must be registered. So
I only like people that like me.
well, there are still a lot of people who like the former president.
My beautiful Christians, I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian.
Yeah,
I love you.
We've got it all for you today. And add to that the analysis of Michael Shure, which will kick off the second hour. Friday Fabulous Florida, which will cap the first hour. And then, again, I have all this polling information for you. We'll also review the remarks of former President Trump in his rambling press conference of yesterday. I guess you call it a press conference. The press was there, and there was a conference of sorts, but there were no follow-up questions allowed. And the questions that were asked were these kind of softball-y questions. So they keep going, Kamala Harris hasn't done a press conference. And well, is that the gold standard for press conference? I mean, you could do one of those falling out of bed. And then, of course, he just rambled, which was, that's a Trumpian thing to do. Sometimes his rambling really works. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that a rambling Donald Trump was something that the press ate up. And I'd say they continue to eat it up. They really do hold Trump to a much lower standard than they hold Democratic candidates or things going on in the Democratic Party. When the teacher grades you lower than you feel you should have been graded, and then you talk to the kid who, doesn't read the material, didn't really understand a lot of the concepts in class, and they have the same grade you do, and you go to the teacher and you say, hey, just weird. Like, I have a B- here, and you also gave, Chad over there a B-. I mean, it's not. And she goes, well, because I expect more from you than I expect from Chad. And
well, we know you're capable of more than Chad.
Thank you. That's the teacher response.
Right.
And you walk away thinking, oh, isn't that nice? Sort of. But in this case, I'd say that the press corps expects more from the Democrats than they do from the Republicans. And therefore, they grade the Republican paper far more generously than they do the Democratic paper. That's all I'm saying. And
but don't you want to be the kid that don't you want to be the candidate graded higher? I mean, really? Held to a higher standard?
I want everybody held to the same standard. That's what I want.
Well, if you know that Chad, a.k.a. Donald, isn't capable, then you really can only ask of what is, what the student or candidate can deliver.
Well, I don't quite know what you're saying, but let me just take a crack at it.
It's not possible, is what I'm saying. It's not possible
no, what I'm
for him to
Kim, how are
deliver
you?
an A paper. He can't do it.
What I'm saying is they're press conferences, okay? So they're meetings with the press. Again, you can call them press conferences, and even the press conference that went down at Mar-a-Lago, and we've got a little piece of it, several pieces of it. You can hold it to whatever standard you want. I mean, I can hold the press to a certain standard, right? How come give Donald Trump a back rub when you're doing a press conference, but you devour Joe Biden when you're doing a press conference. I mean, you know, there's a grade that you give the press as well. So then you get to the candidate and you say, well, wouldn't you rather be the candidate where a lot is demanded of you? I think the same should be demanded of both candidates. I don't think this is where the grading the paper analogy breaks down. I mean, the reality is that you're trying to choose an extremely important, make an important choice for the most important person, arguably from a structural legislative policy standpoint, in the entire United States. I think it's fair to hold both parties to a big standard. Now, the weird thing about this, and then I will get into the video, is that just by the nature of personal style, there is significant movement as to how you evaluate someone. Someone can be well-spoken, and you may be taken by that. Someone can be less of an orator, but maybe conceptually and philosophically more in line with you. So I'm not saying that everybody has to come off the same way, but I am saying that the standard, the general standard that you hold these candidates to, it should be maintained.
When Trump went to the National Association of Black Journalists, and that first question was asked, that was holding him to a standard, holding him to account for his previous statements. And when the question was asked, he had a full-on meltdown. That's what happens when you treat him like any other candidate. He loses his mind.
And why do those moments occur in such small numbers? Because the press just knows that they're going to get that blowback. I mean, he's really bullied the press. So, again, they talk about mainstream media and all this sort of thing. I think mainstream media has coddled Donald Trump to a large degree. I think mainstream media is the reason you had Donald Trump win the 2016 election. You had, I feel, real media malpractice in the covering of Donald Trump and that race between Hillary and Trump and Bernie Sanders, and you can even go back to the primaries. But we're really getting far afield. I want to show you the breaking news of the moment, and it's pretty significant when it comes to polling. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Let me share with you some fairly significant polling, and it's not just new polling. The way they did this polling is to return to voters who had already responded to the poll in the Ipsos poll the first time, and they'd indicated preference away from Joe Biden. They went back to those same voters, and now you have a very different result. Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump 42% to 37%.
Ooh.
According to this latest Ipsos poll. Harris has widened her lead. Now, the nationwide poll of over 2,000 adults found 4% of those surveyed backed independent candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, 4% is lower than what used to be the number associated with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., which was Robert Kennedy Jr., I should say, which was 10% back in July. So he's lost 6 percentage points, and that's more than half of his support, at least in this polling. They had a margin of error around 3 percentage points. In a separate poll, again, Ipsos, finding Harris leading Trump 42 to 40 in the 7 states where the election was closest in 2020. Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. This is the latest Ipsos poll. 42 to 40. Harris leading Trump. They did not break out the results for individual states, so that is the whole bundle, if you will. The poll had mostly shown that Biden and Trump were tied when Biden was in the race. and Biden was performing worse than he had at the same point in the 2020 election. It was one of the reasons that those within the Democratic Party were pointing to the map and showing Joe Biden, you're in bad shape. But there has been a significant change in polling and in momentum. Tony, run a little bit from CBS.
The polls are looking like they're very strongly for us. And no matter where you look, in fact, a lot of states that people thought weren't in play are very strongly in play. Some were actually leading in.
That was Donald Trump in June, when it felt like every poll was trending in his direction. 2 months later, and Kamala Harris's ascent to the top of the Democratic ticket has this race looking like it is in a dead heat. The nonpartisan Cook Political Report is moving Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada from lean Republican to toss-up. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. Anthony, thanks so much for being with us.
Great to talk to you, Adriana.
So, Anthony, break it down. What is the current state of the race at this moment?
It's close, in one word. This is what illustrates it. Here's the map. We're going to spend a lot of time with this map over the next couple of months. The states that are in white are the battleground states, and they are all close. They are very close in all of our CBS News estimates. They're close in a lot of other polling as well.
Just for people listening, stop for a second, Tony. I just want to be aware of the fact that a lot of people take in the podcast just to audio. So it's, of course, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania that he's pointing to, but add to that North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. So when he's talking about these states and battleground states, I want you to be aware of the fact that those are the states that are highlighted on the map. Go ahead, please.
And so that makes the race overall close. For context, Joe Biden, when he was at the top of the ticket, was in fact trailing Donald Trump in some places substantially. But now there's been this big reset. Now the race is tight with Harris at the top of the ticket. And I just want to show you a little bit of the story of why. First of all, a lot of voters saying in general, over 2/3, saying that they think the country is ready to elect a black woman as president. But I want to show you this as well. Harris has consolidated the Democratic base. She's got 96% of Democrats with her. And that's on the back of an increase in enthusiasm among Democrats. More Democrats saying that they're likely to vote, that they're going to turn out. That's something that wasn't happening as much with Joe Biden, also even with independents. And I'll show you this, too, because we talk a lot about these demographic groups. Harris doing better among black voters than Joe Biden was, a core part of the constituency, so movement there, as well as increased enthusiasm and saying that they're going to turn out. That's the underpinning of the change in the dynamic, Adriana.
Okay, so that's great. Thank you. And I love that he mentioned enthusiasm, because you may say, well, like enthusiasm, dude, really? Is that that is code for turnout. Okay, so you need, if you're the Democrats, you need big turnout. We discussed a million different ways how the electoral college map favors the GOP. When you're a Democrat, if you're hoping to win the presidency, you're going in with a strike on you anyway, because of the way the electoral map is laid out. But if you can get your people, the Democrats, to show up in big enough numbers, you should win the election, because there are more of you, Democrats, than there are Republicans. The problem is that the Democratic Party is an immense party with many different coalitions. It's the big tent party, right? And a lot of people who are under that tent don't show up on election day and don't vote. So you do need that enthusiasm, and you need a motivated base. It's only been some 19 days since Kamala emerged, says Karen. That's exactly right, which is why two things are true, I think. One is, this is a phenomenon, right? Her surge is a phenomenon. The other thing is that it's a wild reversal for Donald Trump. This is a guy who was, what's the old line? Measuring the drapes for, he was so ready to go. It seemed as though, and I told you before, the choice of J.D. Vance, in that you could see the kind of confidence he felt. I don't need to put somebody on the ticket who brings me a state. I don't need to put somebody on the ticket who balances me. I just need a fire-breathing dragon on the ticket so I can hang out at Mar-a-Lago and play golf. And that's kind of what he's been doing. All of a sudden, he's on the wrong side of these polls. And it's a very different attitude. And he holds a desperate, I'd suggest, press conference. He's desperate to get back in the news cycle, and he's desperate to communicate certain talking points. And in that desperation, he holds that news conference or whatever the thing was yesterday. So be aware. Exactly, Mark. These are the polls to watch in our quasi-democracy. Yeah, that's very well put. All right. So now to yesterday. Donald Trump held that thing that he did. I'm saying thing because it wasn't really a press conference. No follow-ups allowed. The questions were softballish, But let's take a look at a little bit. Tony, I don't know what we have first queued up, but go ahead. I don't typically put any stock in polls, but the donations give credence to Kamala gaining ground. Yeah, thank you, Karen, for mentioning the donations. Money, again, another sad aspect of American politics. Money is a litmus test for how well a candidate is doing and also how enthusiastic the populace is about supporting a candidate, particularly when you look at what? First-time donors or repeat donors. And they have a lot of first-time donors in the Kamala Harris group that has made these record donations, $300 million. What do you have, Tony, next? Go ahead. This is Trump from yesterday.
A small number of people relatively going to the Capitol. But
January
you never
6th,
see
he's
the
talking
picture
about.
of the crowd. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken. I've spoken to the biggest crowds. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people. If not, we had more. And they said he had 1 million people, but I had 25,000 people. But when you look at the exact same picture, and everything's the same because it was the fountains, the whole thing, all the way back to from Lincoln to Washington, and you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people. They said I had 25,000, and he had 1 million people, and I'm okay with it because I liked Dr. Martin Luther King. Yeah.
So the question...
I mean, we know it's not true, and he had pictures doctored.
The question that prompted that even was wild. It was, what do you think of the size of Kamala Harris's crowds? It was the implication being there seems to be an enthusiasm on the part of her voters, right? And what does he go right into? I've addressed much bigger crowds. I've had the biggest crowds in the history of politics. In fact, if you look at the pictures of Martin Luther King's speech and my speech, same real estate, same area, my crowd is bigger than Martin Luther King. I mean, it's deranged. It's really deranged. Yeah. And even if it were true, and of course it's not even in the same universe as truth, why would you want to somehow one-up MLK? Why would you want to one-up Martin Luther King Jr., a revered civil rights leader whose life was taken in service of bringing civil rights to those who didn't have it at the time? And you could argue still don't have many of those rights when it comes to voter disenfranchisement, this kind of thing. But anyway, my point is there's no end game that's worth it. But he can't help himself. He can't help himself but compare himself to Lincoln, to Washington, to Martin Luther King Jr. It's madness. Here is another thing that he visited in the course of that rambling press conference from Mar-a-Lago yesterday.
Well, I know Willie Brown very well. In fact, I went down in a helicopter with him. We thought maybe this is the end. We were in a helicopter going to a certain location together, and there was an emergency landing. This was not a pleasant landing, and Willie was, he was a little concerned. So I know him pretty well. I mean, I haven't seen him in years. But he told me terrible things about her. But this is what you're telling me anyway, I guess. But he had a big part in what happened with Kamala. But he I don't know, maybe he's changed his tune, but he was not a fan.
So I know Willie Brown from years ago. That's plausible, right? We flew in a helicopter together, and we, weren't sure we were going to make it. That sounded plausible. It's so specific, and, he didn't say it in a braggy way. So you're kind of thinking, oh, that's interesting. I mean, I understand it might have been ancient history. Well, turns out it never happened. Here is Willie Brown on this question about knowing Trump and that helicopter ride.
So you were on a helicopter with him that almost crashed?
Oh.
That's your answer, right? Okay.
He's dreaming.
Okay. I have heard you talk about...
There you go. That's, by the way, if Trevor in Hollywood is listening, I'd love that laugh as a drop, because that was just too good.
He goes on to say nothing but positive things about Kamala Harris. And it's pretty crazy. So they went back and they said, well, gosh, maybe Trump mistook Jerry Brown for Willie Brown. So they go and they ask Jerry Brown, hey, former Governor Jerry Brown, were you ever on a chopper with Trump that almost went down when you were maybe touring wildfires or something? And Jerry Brown goes, no, it never happened. So they're like, okay, well, maybe it was Gavin Newsom, and he's getting Newsom and Brown mixed up. So they go to Gavin Newsom, and they say, Newsom, have you ever been on a chopper with Trump when you were touring wildfires that went down? And Newsom says, what? No, never. We don't know who he's talking about.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, it was madness, and let's face it, he does it so well. He serves up BS like a short-order chef, and you're just like, it sounds believable. I just told you, when he first said it, I thought, oh, that's conceivable, like it could have happened. But, of course, it's just one more thing that Trump is pulling out of his rear and making it sound believable. Now, Trump agrees to this debate plan, the ABC September 10th debate plan. Remember, he'd originally pulled out of that, said, hey, my deal was with Biden, but now that Biden's not in it, I'm not doing the debate on the 10th. Well, now he's back in. And it's no wonder, right? I've just mentioned to you, he is desperate. He has to change the narrative. Things have gone very well for the Harris people thus far. Hey, look, it's still a dead heat, essentially. You're within the margin of error. So, Democrats, I wouldn't get too overconfident, and you still have to show up in big, big numbers. The other thing I would say to Democrats is you're dealing with states that are spring-loaded to, A, disenfranchise you, and B, as we've talked about on this show, have people in key positions who won't certify the vote, regardless of what it is. So you can even win the election, and they won't certify. These are things that will be adjudicated. There are lawyers on both sides waiting to go, but I'm just making the point that, you can really get out over your skis on this because of some good polling, but the polling is so tight that any misstep could change things. So they're expecting huge viewership on September 10th. And again, Trump is also pushing, I believe, another debate that might happen over on Fox News. But the only debate that has been agreed to is September 10th on ABC. And then one other wild card that I'll just mention on the September 10th ABC debate is
The Mark Thompson Show.
Is that, Trump is in a lawsuit with who? ABC for defamation. He is suing George Stephanopoulos for defamation. Now, that might be DOA, but right now that is going to trial. There was an attempt on the part of ABC to have the trial thrown out, have the defamation case thrown out, and the judge said, no, I'll hear it. So there is that. Whereas Biden had been trailing Trump in key swing states, Harris has made gains. This Ipsos poll is huge. 42 to 37 is what you walk away at the end of this week with, a 5-point Harris lead. We'll talk more with Michael Shure about this at the top of the next hour. You never would have thought that crowd size and a comparison to Martin Luther King and all this other stuff ever would have made it into the conversation yesterday. But again, all bets are off when it comes to Trump and his decisions as to what to do. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I quickly want to welcome our crew, all of you who come here. We do a 2-hour show live every day, Monday through Friday. And if I can't be here, there are times when I cannot be here. I pretty much turned my life over to this program. But even so, things do come up. Kim is my stalwart number 2, and she does show up in a big
Kim,
way.
how are you?
So we have the luxury of Kim with us today, and Kelly Malloy. It's Friday, and Mark is on, and how about a 10 spot?
Big shout out.
Thank you for the super sticker and super chat. We're a crowd-funded show, so when the crowd funds us, I like to make a big deal out of it. Otherwise, we go away. No Contendo says, Mandela Barnes and Andrew Gillum both lost by less than 30,000 votes. Black voting dropped in both races. Dems need to invest in grassroots door knockers. Thank you. Great point that you can have the enthusiasm, but if you don't have the turnout.
Big shout out.
Yeah, you don't make it. You don't make it. So certainly the Democrats have that enthusiasm now, but I'm by no means convinced that, everybody shows up. Softball questions and same old hits. No fact-checking as crowds were bigger in size than Martin Luther King's Freedom March at the Capitol. Outrage. I know, the absurdity of it makes you laugh, but the comparison is outrageous and makes you angry. You're right, Vilma.
Big shout out
for that. Momentum is clearly in Kamala Harris's direction, and it appears the floor might be dropping for DJT, too. Thank you, Michael Bravo. Again, I love that fake name. Or if it's really your name, I love something about Bravo being the last name is very, I very much love it. But I would just say this. I don't know that the floor for DJT is dropping so much, but I'd like to see some more polling. But certainly he seems to be hitting a ceiling, to be fair. But anyway, really a provocative notion. And I want to give a special big shout out.
Big shout out.
Because Tess Downey says this to us as she gives us $40, which is a real cool infusion of cash. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
As I say, we're crowd-funded, so we like to celebrate the crowd that funds. And she says this: it's been 4 months since my triple bypass open heart surgery.
Oh, wow.
Being optimistic and an Aquafit instructor, wow, man, helped me recover and get back into teaching after only 2 months. So grateful for the Mark T Show. Happy Friday. Tess, that is a sweet, beautiful note.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
I know, but it does almost make me cry. It really does.
After only 2 months? That's amazing, Tess.
That's because you're an Aquafit instructor.
Wow.
I mean, I've got to think, right? That's amazing. Happy Friday, she says. Very, very cool. Happy Friday indeed. Really, really cool. And finally, Peter Newton says, happy 50th Nixon's resignation day. Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. Wow, that is really good knowledge from Peter Newton.
Big shout out.
Yeah, really something. So, yeah, right on, right on. All right, thanks. The chat is live and it's open, and you can also add comments any old time. We do look at comments after hours and after hours trading constantly as well. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I have Friday Fabulous Florida coming up. I also have Michael Shure. We'll look at the week in politics. I also have movies and streaming, all of that coming up in the next hour as well. Man, I wanted to do a quick law and disorder. Tom gun, my favorite gun is a Tom gun. $50 contribution.
Big shout out.
Big shout out, Tom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Both Tess and Tom. And Harry Magnet, it's a Friday Fiver. Here's for Trump's cognition test.
Big shout out.
He does seem to be losing it a bit, doesn't he? But again, the press is just much easier on him than they were on old Broadway Joe. Denise Incarpi, or Incarpi? $2.
In Serpy.
Oh, of course, in Serpy.
Big shout out.
In Chirpy, maybe? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Denise. And Ashley, come on with the coolest name. Ashley Petrus.
Big shout out.
Big shout out, $50. Are you kidding? What a day.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
I am going to cry. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, give you the 4 thank yous. Very cool. Wow. Thank you, guys. And by the way, anybody who wants to support the show on an ongoing basis, the way to do it, is through Patreon and PayPal, and there are links to both Patreon and PayPal under this video on YouTube. And if you're listening on one of the live audio podcast platforms, it's themarkthompsonshow.com, themarkthompsonshow.com, and you'll be able to see click-throughs to Patreon and PayPal. And we scroll the names of everybody who's part of that crew at the end of every show, and Tony updates that once a month. So
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, there's that. I don't think I have any more time to get to some of this, so I'm going to take a quick break for news, and I'll put some of this other stuff to the side. Friday Fabulous Florida next. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron
Smash
rod.
it with your iron rod. Hit it hard. Kim's News and then Florida next. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are both campaigning today. Trump for Republicans in Montana tonight with a rally in Bozeman, with Republican candidate for Senate Tim Sheehy. Meanwhile, Vice President Harris and Tim Walz will be in Phoenix, Arizona today.
Boy, Trump really going out on a limb trying to get that Montana vote.
Yeah, you know.
Oh, man.
Maybe the rally will be bigger in Montana. President Biden will join Vice President Harris next week to campaign. The White House announcing today the two will travel to Maryland Thursday to discuss efforts to lower costs for the American people. This will be the first joint campaign event since President Biden dropped out of the 2024 presidential race and Vice President Harris became the nominee. A third person has been arrested in connection with the terror plot on Taylor Swift's concerts in Austria. Officials said an 18-year-old who had allegedly been in contact with the main suspect was taken into custody yesterday. A 19-year-old main suspect and 17-year-old were arrested Tuesday. Officials said the 19-year-old confessed that he'd planned to kill himself and a large number of people using explosive devices and knives. Newly released body cam video revealing frustration among local officers during former President Trump's assassination attempt. A clip reveals a Butler Township Police Department officer tried to warn the Secret Service about covering the rooftop area where that would-be assassin eventually fired from. Another clip shows one officer scaling the building and confronting the shooter before falling to the ground. The investigation into the Secret Service failures to protect Trump is ongoing, but now
the more you talk about
released.
The more you talk about it, the more it sounds like it was really a Secret Service failure. And you always think, well, it's the local yokels who blew it, but it sounds like it was the Secret Service that blew it.
They were in charge. As mentioned, today marks 50 years since the inauguration of a man who became president under some pretty unique circumstances. During an August 9th, 1974 ceremony at the White House, Vice President Gerald Ford took the oath of office. He became president following the resignation of Richard Nixon in connection with the Watergate scandal. Special counsel Jack Smith wants to push back the deadlines in former President Trump's election interference case. Yesterday, Smith asked the judge in the case, Tanya Chutkin, for more time to settle how to proceed after the Supreme Court ruled Trump does have some immunity protections as former president. Smith asked for a 3-week delay to determine how this case will move forward now. The CDC is reporting that COVID deaths are declining, now listed as the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, as opposed to the 4th leading cause in 2022. During the peak of the pandemic in 2021, COVID was the 3rd largest disease killer in America, behind heart disease and cancer as well. And this is a story that seems like a long time coming. The Arrowhead water bottle company has been ordered to stop their operations in the San Bernardino Mountains. The federal government backing up California state regulators and ordering the company that bottles Arrowhead water to stop drawing that water from the San Bernardino Mountains. About a year ago, the California Water Resources Control Board ordered Blue Triton to stop using that water, which flows through public lands like the San Bernardino National Forest. And this week, the LA Times says the U.S. Forest Service has now denied Blue Triton's permit to extract water from the San Bernardino Mountain Springs.
It's very interesting because, as you know, we have a lot of antiquated water laws in California, and the rights are antiquated as well. They have been reworked. There was just a major reworking of water rights that we went over. This is probably about 8 months ago. But the essential situation in California has been if you stick a pipe in the ground, you can just keep pumping. And companies like Nestle and others have been doing that and just robbing California of groundwater supplies. So there is an attempt, I think, on the part of regulators in California. I mean, it's come woefully late, but at least it's come to try to hang on to some of this water, which is so precious in California. It's a vanishing resource, and we are in a situation where we just can't have a lot of outside companies coming here and pumping groundwater out and then reselling it, at $3 whatever it is, a bottle in plastic bottles to us, which is exactly what's happening.
California's homelessness crisis is hitting a new level. Governor Gavin Newsom is now threatening to take away state funding from cities and counties that don't remove encampments. He put on the gloves yesterday to help clean up an area in Los Angeles, saying local governments have unprecedented resources and it's time to see the results, or he'll be redirecting that money. Governor Newsom issued an order last month to clear out these encampments on state property and urged others to follow suit, starting with areas that pose the highest health and safety risks. He wants those encampments cleared away, and that's it.
Wow.
Good day, sir.
Yeah.
Vice President Harris coming back to California this weekend. It'll be her first visit since launching her presidential campaign and her first fundraiser since naming Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. Harris will headline the event Sunday in San Francisco, where some of the Bay Area's wealthiest donors could spend up to $500,000 to attend.
It's a battle of the wealthies in San Francisco, right? You got the wealthy David Sachs, PayPal people, Peter Thiel, etc. Now you have the wealthies on the other side. What's his name from?
Musk, Elon.
Well, no, Musk is on the side of David Sachs and Trump and the GOP. But I'm thinking of Mark Benioff. Mark Benioff is
Salesforce.
Salesforce is reporter. So you've got people like that on the side of Kamala Harris.
Today in San Francisco, the road restrictions are in place for outside lands. The festival starts today in San Francisco, kicking off its 16th year at Golden Gate Park with more than 70 artists performing through Sunday. Most of the entrances to this area are closed and several to cars, and several muni routes will be affected as well. They've got temporary taxi stands continuing through the weekend. Organizers expect 225,000 people to show up for outside lands this weekend. So, this company Big Lots?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they're going to close a bunch of stores. 10 stores in the Bay Area are shutting down, 75 statewide. The discount retailer in big trouble. The president and CEO admits the company's sales have taken a hit, down 10% in the first quarter of this year. While there's no specific date set, the list includes one store each in Santa Clara, Santa Rosa, Vacaville, Concord, Fairfield, Gilroy, Hercules, Livermore, Milpitas, and Rohnert Park. So sayonara to those stores. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I know. Kind of a bummer. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass back in Paris ahead of Sunday's Olympic Games closing ceremony. Bass will be receiving the official Olympic flag and will bring it back to Los Angeles ahead of hosting the 2028 Summer Games. Bass is joined by LA Metro's CEO Stephanie Wiggins and George Pia, president of the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum Commission. Thursday, the three officials were given a tour of several landmarks in the Paris area and visited the Olympic Cauldron. Bass will be the first black female mayor to receive the official Olympic flag during a closing ceremony.
Wow.
So there you go. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. My package came in the mail yesterday.
Oh, yes.
With something unexpected.
Oh.
He knew, Cliff, that I was out of my vanilla tea. And what did he do? He put a 2-pound coffee bag full of vanilla tea in my order with a special love note thanking me for continuing to purchase from CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And I just love him. I mean, it's not every day where, usually people throw the coffee in the cart in the grocery store, what have you, or the tea. In this case, I can say, I have a coffee guy. I have a guy.
Well, the more to the point, not that I don't care about you desperately, Kim, and your own personal experience, but I do like that he's that way with everybody.
Yeah.
So I've heard stories and received emails from people saying, I was having a problem and I couldn't decide between this and that, and I actually called, and the Roastmaster General, Cliff, was so happy to hear from me, and then he ended up sending me both, and blah, 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 blah. He really treats everyone that way. So he's a special guy, and they're a special place, and there he is on the left. And that's the Coachella Valley Coffee family. And it's not just coffee, as you heard. It's tea. It's cold brew. They have that new blend that is just an awesome, I think it's a dessert coffee because it's got a hint of cinnamon that's really quite special. Great finish. Go to CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. There are tasting notes on all their beans. Again, this is fresh crop. This is not stuff that's been sitting around a long time. You can see a lot of discounted beans on the internet. You can knock around, you can find yourself cheap beans. That is not fresh crop. This stuff is all fresh, hand roasted, ready to go. And do use the discount code MARKT at checkout to get 10% off. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, girl, baby girl, don't even play.
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
I did everything right and they indicted me. I misspoke. I stand corrected. My words offend so many people. My bad. I'm sorry.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
That was very inappropriate.
My beautiful Christians, I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. I only like people that like me.
Put that coffee down. There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, right on, everybody. Right on. Thanks for being here. We're a live show 2 hours a day on the West Coast, the left coast. As you face the map, I don't mean to suggest left and right politically. California is on the left side of the country as you face the country from 30,000 feet. And we go from 11 till 1 Pacific time. But if you're on the right side of the country, the east side of the country, it's 2 to 4 Pacific Eastern time. And then you adjust for the times in between. It's like the Olympics. Did anybody find themselves watching the breaking, as it's called? It's not called break dancing anymore. It's called breaking in the Olympics as an Olympic sport. Did you watch any of it, Kim?
I haven't seen the breaking.
Yeah, the breaking is big. It's controversial. It's very, maybe, Tony, you can find a still of it, you know. I know they're very protective about what we can use. But it's very gymnastics heavy, I would say, or, you know, there's physical agility associated with it and choreography associated with it. It reminds me a little bit of like a floor exercise in gymnastics. But it's wild that it has somehow become part of the Olympics. And it's somewhat controversial. Like the old schoolers say, you know, I don't need breakdancing in my Olympic Games. And the breakers say, first of all, it's not called breakdancing, dude, anymore. It's called breaking. And secondly, these times are new. And maybe some of these sports become, there it is, become integrated into the games. Thank you, Tony. And it's pretty cool to watch, but it definitely isn't something that, you know, was at your daddy's Olympic Games.
Thanks, Tony.
You know.
I love that giant Olympic boombox. That's cool.
Yeah, the whole thing is kind of well presented, and then they kind of have a beat going while, yeah, there's the giant boombox. So, there's that. The girls breaking is quite amazing, says Doug. I just saw the guys breaking, so I don't know about that. It does take skill and fitness, says Audrey. Yeah, no question about it.
I heard
this
Snoop,
is interesting.
Snoop Dogg is like really looking forward to the
yeah,
breaking.
Snoop is the dude. Snoop, I didn't think his brand could get hotter, but it is.
Oh, totally.
Karen says boxing is not going to be in the next Olympics, Mark. The IOC has a big conflict with the International Boxing Association for being corrupt. You know something? The corruption on both sides when it comes to the Olympics is crazy. I mean, really. You know, the only organization I can think of that rivals for corruption, a sports organization I'm talking about, might be the International Soccer Organization. They're all corrupt also. I'm talking bags of cash left in your hotel room corrupt, okay? That's the way the IOC is. That's all of these organizations where they're making decisions that affect an entire country based on whether or not they're going to get the Olympic Games, whether or not a sport's going to be included. These are really important decisions from the standpoint of dollars and cents. They are corrupt as the day is long. So that's just a fact. But so I love when one corrupt organization calls the other corrupt organization corrupt, you know. There's Snoop, and there is the breaking. Yeah. FIFA, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Thank you, John Doe, FIFA. Will they show the breaking competition again after 3 a.m. so we can watch during our daytime? Oh, yeah, interesting. Gordon has done the math. I'll ask Kim to research that. Maybe Kim can...
Kim, how are you?
Yeah, find out about when the breaking is going to be on again. They used to have huge breakdancing competitions, says John, in cities like Colorado. Well, wait a minute. Colorado's not a city. You mean places like Colorado, maybe, or states like Colorado. Just to clean up your comment, John. But I take your point that breaking used to be something. Look, there were MTV shows dedicated to it, right? And then I did get a question about something that we kind of have to deal with, and that is Brian saying, Mark, when is the end of summer meetup?
Oh.
Yeah.
Big shout out.
We do need to do that, Brian, and thank you for reminding me. I'll get with Kim and Tony, and we'll make it happen, okay? But thank you for staying on me on it, because there's a lot going on, as you are aware, and so that's kind of been lost in the lights. So every Friday, we take a moment away from everything, and we focus on a state that always serves up the unusual, the fanatic, the bizarre. We do it in a segment we call, affectionately, Friday Fabulous Florida.
It's time for Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
A look at the weirdest stories from our weirdest state.
We start in Citrus County, Florida. A woman arrested. Sheriff pulls her over with multiple open alcohol containers.
What?
She does this, heavy drinking, as Hurricane Debbie had arrived and was roaring. According to the Citrus County Sheriff's Office, the sheriff was on his way to assess the impact of Hurricane Debbie on roads when he noticed a possibly impaired driver.
Oh, look at her. I mean, we're not just talking a can of beer. We're talking the whole liquor store there.
Yeah, she's got quite a bit going on.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
She needs to take that thing to the car detailer. Yikes.
Yeah, there's a lot, as I say, going on in that shot. He noticed the motorist spinning her wheels at a stoplight in the lane next to him. Once the light turned green, the driver began to drive erratically. She was continuously turning her hazards on and off, and he became concerned, you see. So he pulled the car over, called for backup. As he approached the car, he could smell the odor of alcohol from the driver's breath and noticed she had slurred speech. So
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that there's alcohol involved. Thank you, though. The driver, Candace Wisecup, 38, and there she is, asked to step out of the car, at which point the sheriff and deputies on the scene noticed several open containers littering her front seat.
What can you tell us about the scene?
There's several open containers littering the front seat, Larry. They found 3 empty shooters of liquor, an open can of beer, and a 4th unopened shooter. Looking at her booking photo, we do have to assign a numerical value. It's 1 through 10, 10 being the highest, to her booking photo. What would you give her, Candace's photo?
Can I just comment on her name, Wisecup?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because of all the cups of booze in her car, not so wise, Wisecup.
Of all the cups of booze, not one of them is wise.
Yeah.
Right.
No. So Candace, I'm going to go ahead and give Candace a 6.
Oh, I'm going to give her a 7.5.
Girl,
all right.
just
yeah.
woo.
Yeah, girl, you are just woo. But Cheryl says 2, and Audrey says, I believe, a 6. 4 says Max, and
All right.
7 says Michael. Michael and I were on the same page on that. Anyway, she performed poorly on the field sobriety test, blaming the storm winds for her not being able to walk in a straight line. She said, look, alcohol's got nothing to do with this. The storminess and the winds are preventing me from walking a straight line.
Oh, it's the storms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hurricane Debbie.
She refused to submit a breathalyzer test. She was found to be driving on a suspended license as well.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
The cops brought her into custody. Meanwhile, on the other side of Florida, a Florida woman in a fight with her husband. And during the fight over the fast food birthday meal, she was hurling burritos and a taco at her husband.
Food fight.
The woman arrested over the weekend. The burrito and soft shell taco. In the arrest report, they do specify soft shell. Thrown at her husband during this argument over the meal. It's sad because the meal was for his birthday, the husband's birthday.
Well.
But she's charged with domestic battery for the fast food assault, the birthday assault. There she is, Esha Prasad, and on the Mark Thompson Show booking photo meter, I'm going to give her a 7 also. What about you?
I concur.
All right. She and her husband of 5 years got into an argument after she bought him food from Taco Bell and McDonald's for his birthday. This according to the police affidavit. Hard to believe that a Happy Meal and a purchase of food from Taco Bell could somehow end up with an arrest and with her in custody.
It truly turned into taco hell.
Oh, that's just so strong.
Yeah.
She allegedly threw the burrito and soft taco shell at him. The burrito was still on the man's face when the cops arrived at the house.
What?
He wasn't injured. She said that she threw the burrito at her husband because he threw a bag at her. He denies that. She was booked into the Pinellas County Jail and released later that day. Speaking of throwing things, there was another ugly incident, Kim, with a Florida man throwing spaghetti sauce at his own mother.
What?
That's not cool.
It is not cool as well. And when the cops came after him, Anthony Edlin, who you see here, he hid from the cops. But more on that in a second. As you look at his booking photo, which he, I think, provides for us with the beautiful orange jersey that they give you when you check into some of these establishments you'll be remaining in custody in.
Yeah.
I'm going to give him a 7 also. I like him. Yeah, I like him. He's the kind of guy I'd like throwing spaghetti at my mother. He threw spaghetti sauce at his mother, Anthony Edlin, his mother, this sweet woman, I'm presuming, got into a verbal argument. This is just this past Sunday this whole thing happened. On the Lord's Day. I mean, it's really...
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
Exactly. Edlin, also known as Anthony Flacco, really? Okay, was arrested for domestic battery and resisting an officer without violence. It's unclear whether the spaghetti sauce thrown at his mom was hot at the time. He's lived with his mother for over 5 years. But when she called the cops, he fled the house and he hid from the cops behind a group of bushes in the backyard. Mm-hmm.
Well, family dinner's exciting with those folks.
The cops showed up. They found him behind the bushes as they announced, "Police, show me your hands." He was not under the influence of drugs. Thank you, Tony, for showing us the actual...
There he is in the bushes. Look at him
there.
there.
He is.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. They caught him there. They did check for alcohol and drugs, not under the influence. So all of this sprung from a sober head, although he clearly has some issues. Let's be honest.
I mean, they can see right through those bushes. It's not like you're,
Yeah, there's not
incognito.
a cloak of invisibility in those
exactly.
Bushes. A Florida woman accused of drowning her roommate's pet spider in ginger ale.
Oh, God.
You know how I feel about this? I do not like violence against creatures, innocent creatures.
She doesn't
animals
look quite
and
right
insects
either, doesn't she? I mean, she looks a little bit
She
off.
looks like she might have some stuff going on.
Yeah.
A Florida woman arrested after deputies said that she intentionally drowned her roommate's pet spider. She's Elena Rasmussen, 43 years old. We show her here. Her booking photo will get her a 7 from this judge. How about you?
I'm going to give her an 8. She looks like a criminal.
Yeah, okay, very nice. She was booked into the Okaloosa County Jail. Animal cruelty and petty theft. The roommate filed a complaint saying that she took her pet jumping spider while she was not home. Rasmussen allegedly texted the roommate admitting to drowning the spider in ginger ale. While Rasmussen refused to speak with law enforcement in person, she confessed to a deputy over the phone that she drowned the spider. The spider could not be found within the home, and the arrest was made. And finally, my friends, oh no, actually I have 2 more stories.
Okay.
So my second to finally, friends, a rare albino alligator hatches in Florida. 100 to 200 of these things in the world, and you're looking at one of them. A successful pregnancy and birth, the rare albino alligator. It's living at Wild Florida's Gator Park in Kenansville. The parents are also being cared for at the park where their eggs were kept in a climate-controlled room.
What a picture. Look at that.
Yeah. Very rare. Only 100 to 200 in the world. And finally, to avoid an arrest, we've seen people do everything in Florida. They've jumped into water. They've run through parking lots. They've jacked cars. A robbery suspect confronted on a bridge as he stood by the guardrail, jumped into the river below to try to avoid arrest. It happened in Daytona Beach. The cops said the officers spotted a robbery suspect that they've been searching for at 7 in the morning. That's so early to jump off a bridge. When officers told the suspect, the 32-year-old Richard Martanovich, that he was being detained, he said, no, I'm not.
Sayonara, suckers.
The police department enlisted their Marine unit to locate him after he jumped off the bridge to avoid custody.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
See, that's not going to work when the cops have boats.
Exactly. They were able to locate him and to apprehend him in the water.
Oh, that was a surprise for the cop. Look at that.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, went right over the edge.
That, like, what? So that, my friends, is a wrap on it. We have to choose a favorite. We don't want to. It's like choosing between children, but I will offer you a review of the stories. Please pick a favorite. The Florida woman arrested for DUI during Hurricane Debbie, blaming the storm winds for her failed sobriety test and her inability to walk a straight line, even though there were 4 empties right there on the seat when the cops arrived. Florida woman accused of hurling a burrito and a taco at her husband, and the sad part was it was his birthday. But they had a fight over the meal. And a Florida man throwing spaghetti sauce at his mother in a domestic dispute hid in the bushes from the cops, but they did spot him and arrest him. The Florida woman accused of drowning a roommate's pet spider in ginger ale. Cops did make an arrest. The rare albino alligator hatching in Florida, only 100 to 200 of them in the world. And now there's one more. And the Florida man jumping off the bridge into the river to avoid arrest from Florida cops. We don't want a pick a favorite. We don't want to favor one over another. But we must, according to the bylaws of the show. I go to you, Kim. Which one?
I do like the Saucy Son along with B.A. Ware, but I think because of the video and the surprising nature of the bridge leaper, I'm going to have to go with jumping into the water, the bridge jumper. Yeah.
Yeah. Karen Cooper, DUI woman with hurricane excuse. Gordon goes for the Gator. Trevor, no poll. No poll because Albert's not here, and maybe it's my fault. I should have told Tony to try to do a poll. Yeah, Tony's barely making it today.
Thanks, Tony.
So we didn't. We were busy scrambling other stuff. Arachnicide says. Oh
no!
Somebody, yeah, very nicely done, Cassandra. Baby alligator says Melanie. I vote for Spider Woman. Spider Slayer. A lot of love for Spider Slayer, and that woman being arrested. Stop and Think says, when making a spider cocktail, don't shake, stir.
Ew.
Jumping Florida man, says B.A. Ware. Bridge guy, says Brandon. DUI, says the Teach. Albino alligator, bridge jumper. I mean, I don't know where to go. DUI Debbie, DUI Debbie. A lot for DUI Debbie.
It's not a real consensus today, is there?
No, there's not. Hiding in the bushes guy, says Lee.
Yeah.
Well, I will remind you, there are no right answers. But the right answer is the bridge jumper guy. Yeah, that's the one. All right. That is Friday Fabulous Florida for today.
This has been Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
Y'all come back now here.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Is my boyfriend Michael Shure around yet, Kim? I can't see because of the nature of the technical configuration.
He is
okay,
indeed.
Good, great. And let me just first, before I get to Michael, mention my favorite McAllister, who is in the chat again with a super sticker. How about a $20 super sticker
shout
from
out.
Lucy McAllister? Lucy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And Cowpoke Ranch, somebody new. Cowpoke Ranch. Let me see if I can just see what you have said here. As a Trump guy, I am very conflicted. While Trump represents half my views, Walz represents the other. Very strange waters to be swimming in right now. Cowpoke Ranch, I think we should send you a link. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to know what half of your views, to use your term, the Trump guy represents, and what half of your views, again, to use your term, the Walz guy represents. So please stay in touch. You can drop me a line at the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com, the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. Again, thank you for the 5 spot and intriguing and provocative thought. So thanks, everybody who supports the show. Smash the like button, give us a thumbs up, and we'll...
The Mark Thompson Show.
On Fridays, this guy spends some time with us talking about the week in politics. He has forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know. He's the great Michael Shure, everyone. Michael, thank you.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, just have to think of all the political campaigns, of all the rallies, of all the conventions you've been to. I mean, you've done so much in that career of yours, but wow, what a year to be in the thick of it.
It's an unusual year, obviously, and we're on the 50th anniversary today of the day Gerald Ford was sworn in after Watergate and the Nixon resignation. So these are historic times, certainly. And, every election is interesting, none more necessarily than the other. But when something happens that never happened before, certainly in your lifetime, and in the way it did in nobody's lifetime, I think it's pretty telling as to how important and strange a year this is, in fact.
We led the show with the big news, I think, no matter how you square it, and I'm looking for you to square it a little bit for us, which is the new Ipsos poll, which prior to the emergence of Harris to replace Biden, had Biden trailing Trump by as much as 7 points. And this is both nationally and in swing states. The new Ipsos poll has Harris leading Trump by 5 points. Now, again, you can still say it's a toss-up, dead heat, et cetera, but you can't ignore that kind of shift in the poll, can you?
No, you can't. I mean, look, I think, you know how I am with polls. I think that I would want to see more, certainly with a swing that big to make me think that this is in fact where things are. But there is no denying that the enthusiasm gap closed, as we here on the Mark Thompson Show predicted. People have been sending me clips. When I say people, a person who had a clip of me on this show, who isn't involved with the show, sent me, when I was talking to you, Mark, about how you've got to forget who Kamala Harris is now as the vice president, because once she's the nominee, it'll be a whole different ballgame. We can't even pretend to know what that would be like. There's so much hypothetical in politics that relies on the now, and so many people that rely on the now. For example, and I'll give you an example of this because I'm rambling a little off the subject of the poll. People are saying like, oh, if Walz was a good pick as long as they don't lose Pennsylvania. If they lose Pennsylvania, obviously Shapiro was the better pick, right? Well, that's not true. That's not at all true. You don't know if Shapiro would have been able to do what vice presidential candidates don't ever do, which is win a state. And let's say that he was able to close some of the gap. You also don't know what this news cycle that we're sitting in right now would have done to Josh Shapiro, would have done to Democrats who don't like him, would have done to, a dig into his past. So the Josh Shapiro that we know now would certainly not be the same Josh Shapiro, or most likely not be the same Josh Shapiro on election day. There would be many bad, tough news cycles from the Democrats, because we already saw that posturing. So you don't know what that effect would have been. So to say that if they lose Pennsylvania, it's because she didn't pick Josh Shapiro, I'm telling you in August, that's not the case. Now, going back to the polls and what we said about Kamala Harris is we knew that the Kamala Harris who became the nominee would get the embrace of a sort of apathetic Democratic base. And we knew that. We said it, right? We were just counting on those people to somehow show up and vote for President Biden. Now they have a reason to really get out. And you see, so many of these pictures from rallies on these stops she's doing around the country with her running mate that show that, yes, the enthusiasm gap has closed to nothing. As a matter of fact, I would now give that edge to Harris and Walz, and they have their convention coming up in 2 weeks. And then it will settle in after Labor Day, and we'll see where this race goes.
Yesterday, Donald Trump gave that, I'll call it a press conference. I'm really reluctant. I'm not just taking a cheap shot at Trump. I'm kind of taking a shot at the press. It was a hand-picked group, so maybe they're picked for this reason, but no follow-ups, a lot of softball questions. I mean, really softball questions where he could kind of just go any old direction. He did agree to the debate. I mean, I guess that's the kind of news that came out of that. And maybe he had a talking point or two that he started with, but it really turned into a meandering, I guess meandering would be a kind way to put it, sort of long-form riff during which he compared his crowd size to Martin Luther King, suggesting that he had a bigger crowd size than Martin Luther King's famous speech on the Mall. I'm wondering if you take the size of all of that, and maybe it's just a news cycle thing that gets chewed up in the news cycle, but how do you see these kinds of events for Trump playing in the race? Does it matter, or have people already baked in the fact that he's kind of nutty?
I'm confused by what Trump is doing and how their campaign's being run right now, because he doesn't look like he's going for the independent votes. He looks like he's going to shore up what he doesn't need to shore up, which is his blind support, right? And so I don't think there are a lot of people like the gentleman who wrote in earlier and donated to the show, who said he agrees with Trump on half of the things and Walz on the other half. And in that case, I always tell that voter they should vote for Trump, because they're voting for the president, not the vice president. But I still question how you get to that. And we saw it on display yesterday, the lying that was happening. He made up a story whole cloth about being in a helicopter that had to make an emergency landing with Willie Brown. Well, let's say he meant to say Jerry Brown, because he was in a helicopter with Jerry Brown. Willie Brown, the former mayor of San Francisco, said, I never took a helicopter ride with Donald Trump. I don't know what he's talking about. That is a complete fiction. And what Trump is trying to do is bring up old, sort of scurrilous stories that made the rounds of Vice President Harris and the former mayor when Vice President Harris was coming up in politics. And he did it in that way. But I mean, Brian Williams lost a career for making up a story about being in a helicopter in a war zone. And people are saying they want this guy to be president, and he's making up stories, and then he's having these kind of rigged press conferences, and that's not how you win independent voters. That's fine if you're playing to your crowd, right? You do what you do. It's worked for you for whatever reason. We could go over that in history books, but if you're trying to win independent voters and you're trying to win a presidential election, yesterday was not, to me, the way that I would recommend doing it.
Somebody noted this. Delwood says softball for Trump's presser. Mark, what about 10 days of love fest by the press for Harris? Come on, Mark. Well, first of all, I was asking a question about the Trump presser. That's why I didn't mention, the love fest. But I agree with you, and I would ask and turn this into a question for Michael Shure. It seems as though the press is playing along with the momentum that the Harris crowd has. Is that a fair take, or in that sort of the honeymoon period between Harris and the press?
I think there's a little bit of a honeymoon. Look, people in the press are human beings, and their audience are human beings. This is the first exciting thing to happen in this election for a long time. This is an unusual, historic, in the history of presidential election and politics. This may not ever happen again, and certainly it did happen, and everyone in the press is excited about it. I mean, whether you like this ticket, you like this candidate, you don't like them, it's an exciting thing for people who do what we do. And so I think it's, you do get a little bit of a pass at the very beginning. And that will not endure. That's why I said they're going to have their convention. That's going to be a love fest too. So Delwood's going to have to, grin and bear it for that. But it's going to be, it's going to be after the convention. Then it's going to be, holding feet to the fire if the press is doing their job. And I would say it hasn't been a universal love fest either. I think that you'll find the love in the usual circles, and you'll certainly find, I think it's been an intrigue fest, right? I mean, she had to pick a running mate, and that dragged along for quite a while. You'll recall during the time that Trump was out there picking or deciding who he was going to run with, the whole question was not about his running mate, but it was about the president's fitness for re-election. So from the 27th of July until June, until that convention, until that selection, everybody was preoccupied with how the Democrats were going to deal with the president who was fading. And that took up all the air in the room. Well, Kamala Harris's vice presidential search took up all the air in the room, because that's what the lead story was at that time. Not to mention there was an assassination attempt before Trump's convention. So there was a lot that mixed up that news cycle. Otherwise, there would have been the same kind of intrigue. This intrigue is very different. I say simply, from just the human aspect of it, it's different and it's exciting, and that will settle too.
There is another bit, because of it's showing up in the chat here, I'll address it with you. Some states saying they will go along with cheating and fake electors if Trump loses, to go with that one comment on the screen. I don't know what the comment was, but let me just speak to that. I don't know if the states are coming out and saying they're going to go with fake electors, but what they have been exposed as doing is actually having those who are election deniers in positions of certification for the election. And they have essentially pledged, from what we see in reporting, not to certify certain counties, certain critical elections. That is playing out in the background of all of this.
It is, but I think, it's not blind faith. There are a couple of things that this is true, and there's reason that your viewers, listeners bring this up, because it is, it's really important, right? And you have a savvy audience. These are things that people should pay attention to. That said, what isn't being written about is how much money the Democrats are spending in states and federally on legal readiness for those things to happen. And there are many Republicans in the sort of Republican Party writ large, not necessarily MAGA people, but who've said that we realize if Trump loses, we're going to need to move on, and there's going to be a lot of fall off in support, not across the board and maybe not in the majority, but with the entire apparatus of the Democratic legal team and the Democratic Party, and some Republicans, enough Republicans, certainly more than last time, in a vocal way, speaking against that, then I would be worried, but I would know that it's not just a defenseless fight that's going to be put up.
Yeah, I think that it will be a lot of playing out in the courts, various arguments similar to what happened at the end of the last election, right? And as you say,
there are a lot of courts, Mark, that won't take it either.
Right. Okay.
That won't hear these things next time. And again, if the election was as close as it was in 2020, what I'm saying now doesn't apply as universally. But if it's a clear loss for the Republican side in November, then it's there. The teeth that argument has are going to be very weak, even if they have people in place who are going to make that argument.
How on God's earth, says Joan Jackson, is this old guy allowed to be running for president? The world would be more peaceful without this guy. Well, that's like, maybe. I mean, he has this, and this is a question, if I can just take this comment and kind of morph it into a question for you, because this is something we're chatting about last hour. He has obviously this insanely rabid base, many of whom you've spoken with at the rallies and you've had interactions with and firsthand experience with. But obviously he has to and you've just mentioned this a few minutes ago, he has to not only hold on to them, which is kind of easy because they're not going anywhere, but he has to expand that. So the question becomes, does he have a lower ceiling than we're perhaps giving him credit for? Or does he have enough of a ceiling? Is there enough upside potentially that he, and the race is so very close, that he can still be a little bit, if I can just use extreme, I'll use that word.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be easier answered in November. I mean, if I were Donald Trump's campaign advisor, he's speaking in Bozeman, Montana tonight, one of the reddest presidential states in the union. I would not send him to Bozeman, Montana, right? Because he's preaching to a choir there. And let's say people drive over. Where are they driving over from? The Dakotas and Eastern Washington and Idaho. And that's not who he needs to play with. He needs to go to places. He needs to go to swing states. I think perhaps they are a little leery of what happened when he sat down and spoke with the National Association of Black Journalists, and that went haywire. But they have to put him in the places he needs to be, because that's where this election is going to be won. And dispatching J.D. Vance to Pennsylvania, as he said he's going to do, may not be enough, because those elections are going to be won in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh. If you go to some of the other cities like North Carolina, look, they got rained out of North Carolina and Georgia with Hurricane Debbie. I know that, but they've got to prioritize some of these states, and that's where they're going to pick up their independence. But that's why I say I'm, dumbfounded by this. I don't know why it just shows me that Trump cannot be corralled, right? This is who he is. This is what he wants to be. And playing to independent voters is too much of a calculation for him. The RFK voters, if you look at RFK's support, it's almost all for Trump now, now that Harris has entered the race.
It's very interesting that you mention RFK Jr. because he's the one guy who really lost in that Ipsos poll to which I was referring.
Yeah.
I think he lost 6 percentage points.
Yeah. Well, he's gotten a little weirder to everybody, to use a popular word on the trail this year. The story about the bear, which in and of itself is kind of strange more than anything, doesn't tell you about his politics. But I do think that independent voters who were uncomfortable voting for what seemed to be a challenged president and didn't want to do that, were sort of intrigued by RFK because they couldn't vote for Trump. Well, guess what? They have a place to go now. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them do. I spoke to members of Students for Trump, and they all said before that they were sticking with RFK. Sorry, Students for RFK. They were all sticking with RFK when I first spoke to them in Milwaukee. I spoke to them again after Harris was named, and that support had eroded. And again, we're talking about 7 people maybe, but that 7 people is indicative. They were all in for RFK no matter what. And then Harris is on the ticket and they don't want to vote for Trump.
You always make the point that the running mates don't really matter unless there's a misstep or a problem. Then all of a sudden they begin to take on a sort of a supersized role. Things have been fairly cool in terms of the Walz edition, and there haven't been, in your judgment, any kind of bumps that would be deserving of any sort of special attention?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's a bump, right? I mean, there is a serious...
they tried the stolen valor thing.
People are talking about stolen valor. That's not going to go away. That'll show up at a debate. That'll show up in talking points. But I'm so sanguine about it that I think that, I don't think J.D. Vance is going to matter either. This is an election about Donald Trump, and that's all that will matter here. And I don't think that any of the things that we're learning about Tim Walz that we already knew about Tim Walz, any of the people that are coming out to say them, it's a little different when it's the vice presidential running mate than it is when it was, let's say, John Kerry. As untruthful as those may have been, they were devastating for Kerry back in 2008, 2004. So I think that this one, Walz seems to be pretty smooth, and he's a really good do no harm vice presidential nominee who, after Labor Day, I would imagine we're not going to be speaking about very much, and if we are, then I'm wrong.
The RNC is starving down ballot GOP, says No Contendo. Does this make the House and Senate easier wins for the Dems?
I thought the House was going to be tough for the Republicans to hold on to. I think it's going to be tougher now, especially when you have a daughter of California running, and a lot of those seats that are in play are in California and Southern California and Orange County. And then as far as the Senate, I still think that map is just as tough for the Democrats. I don't see that the presidential race is going to impact those because of where those seats are. Maybe Trump going to Montana is important because it lifts up Tim Sheehy, who's running against John Tester. Maybe there'll be some more excitement for protecting the seats in Nevada and in Arizona because you have Harris on the ballot. I think those races, but I think the Senate's going to be pretty tough. I think if the Democrats come away with a tie again in the Senate, they'll be pretty pleased.
I think John was asking about Montana. I made the same point you did about Montana last hour, that I just couldn't understand. I said it sort of sarcastically. Locking up Montana is. I think, what is it, 4 electoral votes to begin with, but you've already got them. You never have to visit ever, and you'll have them.
Right. That's exactly right. So why be there? I mean, if you're in the driver's seat like he is not, and like I just said, if you want to go and bolster that Senate race, sure. If you owe that person in the Senate race and you're campaigning, let's say, in a swing state like Nevada, and you swing up to Montana just to do some goodwill stuff, that's fine. But this is an island of a rally in the middle of a place that Trump does not need to be. And I'm sure the Democrats are very happy about it.
Paulo, who is a Republican, says, believe me, we Latinos know how to identify irresponsible socialists when we come across one of them. Latinos support Trump, he says.
Well, wow. Some do, but the majority do not. And I don't know, and not all Latinos don't like socialism, nor is there socialism on the ballot in this election. So despite Trump saying it and Vance saying it and many of their surrogates saying it, no one here has espoused it who's on the Democratic ticket. So that's that label isn't there. If Bernie Sanders were on this ticket and you were making that argument, I'd say, well, there's something to be said there, though his Latino support was very, very high. If there's one group of voters in America that is not a monolith, it is the Latino voter. Whether you're an immigrant from Cuba, what you think of is very, very different than what you think of if you're a second or third generation Mexican American, or if you're a Venezuelan who has emigrated here and you're a second or third generation Venezuelan. The issues and the geography are very different. They're not a monolith. So I don't think it, just like if you look at any other voting bloc, right? If you look at the Jewish vote is not in any one way or the other. So I think that, yes.
Yeah, the word Latino, and as a Latino, let me tell you what we're going to be doing. I think right away,
yeah.
You can kind of, I mean, I take nothing away from, is it Paolo? But, even following Paolo's comments, there are other Latinos in the chat who are saying, hey, man, I'm not, that guy doesn't speak for me. So
Exactly. And there are a lot of, so what you said is right.
Michael, is there and I'm getting this also, my Bolivian sister loves Kamala. It says,
by the way, socialism thrived in Bolivia. Socialism thrived in Venezuela, and for a moment in Ecuador. So I mean, so just that label alone is not enough. Cuban Americans have a very different experience with it.
I mean, here, socialism, communism, they get thrown around as invectives. The reality is,
and they're not the same either. That's the other thing.
Correct. And there are aspects of, as we discussed before, socialist policies that exist in U.S. policy. You know what I mean? It also, in any case. The question I had for you is related to a number of different things I'm seeing in the chat, and I'll let you go after this. And that is, as you take the measure of things now, it's suggested in the chat by many that the things Trump is doing now represent a kind of desperation on his part. Do you see that reflected in the decisions that he's making, or do you just see kind of a general?
I actually I don't see that desperation. I mean, I'm not trying to, disagree. I'd love to know why people think that. I see the opposite. I see him behaving like someone who thinks he's won the election still, and not looking at how the enthusiasm gap that we talked about has closed, and not seeing an Ipsos poll that shows Harris up by 5 nationally, and not seeing swing state polls tightening. Desperation is not going to Montana. Desperation is saying, I'm going to be doing 7 rallies in Pennsylvania over the next 2 weeks. That's desperation to me. That's like, oh my God, we could lose this thing. And I thought we were going to win it when I was running against President Biden. So I think so I don't see desperation. I see actually the opposite, but so I find it interesting that people see that.
PT asks, if Dems can't win the House and Senate, Michael, with Trump at the head of the ticket, when will they win?
They should win the House, and I don't, and so I'll take that in 2 halves. PT, they should win the House, and I will be as confounded as you are. The Senate is different because it really is dependent on in what states Senate seats are up. So you could see, a Senate seat in Missouri up and say, well, how did the Democrats not win that? Well, Missouri is a very red state. So when Senate seats are up in deep red states, it doesn't matter who's at the top of the ballot because Trump will win those states anyway. It's when you look at a state that's purple, like Nevada, for example, would Jackie Rosen hold on to her seat in Nevada if it were still President Biden on the ticket? We don't know, but certainly the effect that the change at the top of the ticket has had, and the bottom of the ticket, I guess, as you look at that, that tells you that in fact there is definitely a better chance that the Democrats can hold the Senate. I was very bearish on Democrats in the Senate, Trump aside, but that's the geography. That's where these seats are up, and it's a bad cycle for Democrats just because of the geography.
Michael, so grateful always for your time. Thank you. I look forward to, the unfolding political season, bringing even more interesting conversations to us. Again, we're sort of on final approach for the convention. And then after that, there'll be, as you've sort of suggested here in this conversation, a settling of things. and then it's a real sprint to the finish, I guess, right?
It is, yeah. Unlike what we've seen before. I mean, this is a truncated sort of UK type election, France type election, and that's kind of something we're not used to. But the regular things are going to happen. There'll be a debate or two, and then there'll be, down to the wire. There'll be an October surprise, and then there'll be an election, and let's see what happens.
Good stuff. All right, appreciate you so much. Thanks, Michael. Michael Shure,
Doug.
everybody. Bye, Michael.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on. Great to have you here. We're a 2-hour live show, Monday through Friday. And then we'll break out videos from this show if you've missed anything. If you hit the notification bell along with subscribing, you'll at least know when we have a video. You don't have to watch it, but at least it'll be up there. And, of course, we are crowd-funded. It's like a PBS NPR model. You know how they come on and go, if you like this show and you want to see it survive, we need your help. That's really where we are. So this entire endeavor really rests on the shoulders of like 600 people who are our Patreon and PayPal supporters. If you're one of them, thank you. We scroll your names at the end of every show because we are so very grateful. And if you're not yet one of them, please consider being a Patreon or PayPal supporter. There are links to both. You can just click on the links. It'll take you right to the pages where you can put in a credit card number or whatever, and you can join for some small amount the group of people who do support us, and we really do appreciate it. I've got Michael Snyder to come, the Culture Blaster, with movies and streaming options. But
The Mark Thompson Show.
What I'd like to do is get my Kim with a little news. Bring us up to speed, Kim. And then if you bring us up to speed,
Kim, how are you?
I feel it sets the table for Snyder to then bring us in and bring us home with kind of leisure activities, which is sort of movies and stuff like that. Are you ready, Kim?
Yes, why not?
Okay. Okay. Smash the like button like a boss. Do it for Kim. Don't do it for me. Do it for Kim. Kim's news and then Snyder. Next. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great, baby.
See, Obama would love to be the Antichrist.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards. And Tony, I just sent you a couple Tenuta Vineyards videos. Maybe we could play one at the end of this newscast. The nation's largest Latino civil rights group is endorsing Kamala Harris for president. Speaking of Latinos and voting habits, the League of United Latin American Citizens officially endorsed Harris today, breaking with its past practice of not formally supporting presidential candidates. The group's leaders are expected to appear alongside Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, at a campaign rally on Saturday in Las Vegas. A former senior advisor to President Biden says he is suspending his re-election campaign because of horrible attacks by the media and high-profile Democrats. In an interview with Politico, Anita Dunn says President Biden's poor debate performance against Donald Trump wasn't the reason for his campaign's demise. She instead cited public comments from congressional Democrats, including former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, casting doubt on President Biden's candidacy. There is a Democratic California state senator representing the Central Valley now doing a switcheroo and joining the Republican Party.
A switcheroo?
A switcheroo.
Wow.
Marie Alvarado Gil announced her party affiliation change on Thursday. It is the first time in 80 years that a Democratic lawmaker has switched midterm. Alvarado Gil represents Senate District 4 in California, which encompasses parts of several counties in the Central Valley and the Sierra Nevada foothills. In a statement, Alvarado Gil said she was elected to serve the needs of her constituents, not a political ideology. State Democrats still have a supermajority in the Senate.
You cannot say you love your country.
Yeah,
She's
31.
allowed to switch.
They're 31 out of 40 Senate seats, so it doesn't really make a difference, but, that's all right.
It's kind of a wild move.
Yeah. Governor Gavin Newsom wants cities and counties to step up removing those homeless encampments, says he'll withhold funds from those who do not. The governor signed an executive order last month giving local governments authority to get rid of those encampments and ticket homeless people for camping in public. Governor Newsom says people are struggling and dying, and local governments need to step up and use this authority to help them. Brazil's president says 62 people are dead after a passenger plane crashed in Sao Paulo today. Cell phone video from the ground shows the propeller-powered plane spiraling and falling from the sky, killing 58 passengers and 4 crew members. Here in the Bay Area, there is an air quality advisory extended due to wildfire smoke drifting into the Bay Area. Could make it hard to breathe for some people. Experts say exposure to fine particulate matter and other harmful pollutants is unhealthy, even for short periods. They advise staying inside if possible with the windows and doors closed. If you've got to drive, set the vents to recirculate to avoid that air coming in. There are a couple of schools in Concord joining the nationwide no phone movement. Students at Ignacio Valley High and Mount Diablo High can't talk or text at all during the day. Their cell phones now being kept in locked pouches until school is over. The superintendent of Mount Diablo Unified School District says kids admit they watch videos during class instead of paying attention to their teachers. The policy change is expected to help keep them more paying attention in class. So, hello.
Listen to me. I don't want to hear you.
That's right.
Engaged in the class.
Pay attention to the judge.
That's right.
They pay me a lot of money for having attitude.
Okay, I get it.
The father of Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce has a pointed response to Kanye West after the rapper slighted his son's relationship with Taylor Swift in his new song Lifestyle. So Kanye comes out with this song about it. Ed Kelce posted that it showed mental illness on full display. The line in the song, though, written and performed by rapper Lil Wayne, West has had an on and off feud with Swift since he interrupted her acceptance speech at the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards.
Oh, yeah, that was like classic Kanye derangement. Now he's gone to a whole other level. Yeah. But, wow. Yeah, Kanye could just float, one of the apologies that we have loaded up, and probably get back to good, but he doesn't do that.
No.
He's he takes it up to another level,
Got to keep going, digging in.
Yeah.
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Yeah, he won't ever say that. So
the Cartoon Network is no longer online. Warner Brothers Discovery pulled all contents and cartoon off of cartoonnetwork.com offline, instead redirecting visitors to Max, encouraging them to subscribe to watch episodes. A pop-up message notes users can also create a kids profile on the streaming service for ratings restrictions. Previously, the Cartoon Network website offered full episodes and clips of its shows, including Teen Titans Go, Steven Universe, and We Bare Bears, among many others. And this one is for Michael Snyder. Many of the cast and crew of The Shawshank Redemption are making their way to Ohio to celebrate the film's 30th anniversary.
Michael, did you see a Shawshank Redemption?
Yeah.
I hear they're all going to Ohio, where they will be immediately incarcerated.
That's just kind of
a sad part of the story.
Yeah, life imitating art.
I guess so.
The acclaimed 1994 film stars Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman as inmates at Shawshank State Penitentiary.
What was the name of Tim Robbins' character in Shawshank Redemption? I ask you in the chat. Give me the name of Tim Robbins' character in Shawshank Redemption. This is for the big money. What was the name? Not Morgan Freeman's character. Tim Robbins' character. The name. I'm going to give it to Heather Kennedy first in. Andy Dufresne. It's
Look
right.
at her.
Love my Heather Kennedy. Well done. Yeah.
The events will be taking place today through the 11th at the movie's 15 filming sites throughout North Central Ohio. If you're really interested in all of this, you can check their website, ShawshankTrail.com.
What does she get? Was she in the rich tradition of the show?
You get nothing.
You get nothing, but you get our respect. Yeah.
This report is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. It's so beautiful out there, and they have some really wonderful events like, the Grape Stomp.
Oh.
Any event that you go to, anything you buy at the winery, anything at all, you get 10% off across the board. All you have to do is call or email and say, smash it with your iron rod.
Wow.
And when you say this
Smash it with your iron rod
to Rich out at the winery, you get an immediate 10% off. 925-699-4576, the number, or rich@tenutavineyard.com. The website is tenutawinery.com. But I don't know, do we have the video, Tony, of the grape stomp?
I didn't get anything.
We didn't get anything.
Tried to send it over to him. Okay. Well, it's really fun. It's a really fun event. And
Thanks, Tony.
If you're looking for something fun to do with family, maybe celebrating a birthday or looking for something to do to bond with coworkers, it's a really fun time out at Tenuta Vineyard. So check the website, tenutawinery.com, and make sure that you get your discount by texting or emailing Smash It with your iron rod.
I think that is super cool, and it is a great, fun, celebratory thing. You can do it for, you can do it for just the hell of it, but you can also do it for any number of celebratory occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, whatever.
Absolutely.
Or just if you've got guests in town. Yeah, really, really fun. Good stuff.
Anytime we hear from a listener or viewer who has gone out to Tenuta Vineyards or ordered something from them, always a positive comment, always a positive review.
Agreed. The Livermore Valley, if you're looking in from elsewhere, it's in the Livermore Valley. Look it up on the map. And you'll find the wonderful Tenuta Vineyard.
Google it.
Yeah.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
It's our big Friday show. Glad you could be here. And we just will clean this up before I get to Brother Snyder, the culture blaster. First, Trevor Starr mentions that on Monday he will have a major announcement. He's been promising a major announcement now for several weeks. I don't know what it is or what it's in relation to, but I do know that he's been promising it. Thank you for the super chat, by the way.
Big shout out.
I would say that his major announcements have been bumped by other major announcements like Biden stepping back out of the race, Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick. So Trevor, I think, trying to respect the power of current events, has actually postponed his announcement. But he's saying that Monday it will be happening. Heather, I'll get to that in a second. I'm a whimsical supporter, says Michael. Michael Reich with 1745.
Big shout out.
Come on. Big shout out, Michael. Thank you. I'm a whimsical recipient. Thank you. No Contendo says, Paulo, Bolsonaro was beat by Lula da Silva. I guess that is a reference to the fact that Paulo was supporting Bolsonaro. And this, which is always ugly, when we get a correct answer to the question about Tim Robbins' character in Shawshank Redemption, Heather guessed it correctly, as you know, and Phineas with the odd and, might I say, out-of-bounds accusation that Heather Googled it. I just don't think that's fair. I don't think people do Google things. There's a certain presumed purity to these kinds of questions and answers. And then as to what we might be able to give Heather, I mentioned again that the show typically awards no prize per se, but Heather reminds me that maybe the rod of equity and mercy. And you know what? I think she's right. Heather, you need do nothing. You need only receive. Let me get into my quasi-trance-like state. And now...
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Heather.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
It is good for life. It can be revoked, but I don't have any instances of its revocation. It technically can be revoked from you, but I believe that it will likely not be. Congratulations, and thank you for answering the questions so beautifully and so quickly. Now,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Michael, if you're just about done delaying, we can get to your segment. This is the best day of my life, says Heather Kennedy. Smash the like button like a boss. We've done a lot of politics today, a lot of current events. Now we slide into the world of entertainment. The man who brings us news of streamers, of movies. He's the culture blaster who comes and goes on a rainbow. Michael Snyder, everyone.
Hey, it's your Friday afternoon punchline. That's right. At the very, very end of the very, very last show of the week, I sneak on in here and try to, lighten the load a little bit.
Sure.
Mark, in the wake of the new breaking competition, L.A. Mayor Karen Bass has petitioned the IOC to rebrand the Los Angeles Olympics as Olympics 2 Electric Boogaloo. Apparently, they're also naming Shabadoo and Boogaloo Shrimp as team coaches. I'm very, very excited about this.
Working the topical, very good, Michael. We were talking about breaking, and now you've worked in some material.
Absolutely. Speaking of the Olympics, oh my God, Chef Curry was cooking at the Olympics last night.
Yeah.
Our brilliant point guard, the greatest in the game ever, I think, Steph Curry, took a hold of this elimination game against Serbia and basically took the team on his back, Team USA, and won the game. The baby-faced assassin, indeed. Oh, my God, he could not miss at one point. It was just, I'm so happy that he's the star of my favorite team since childhood. So there you go. You're
a Dubs guy, and you are happy to see Steph step up.
Absolutely. Speaking of stepping up, let's talk movies because I have a bunch of them and I want to get to them. Let's kick things off with another movie based on a video game. These things seem to be multiplying like rabbits with toggle switches or something. Borderlands is not the worst movie I've ever seen. But it does seem like bits and pieces of the worst movies I've ever seen smashed together. It's another adaptation of a video game property, and it actually stars, this is the shock, the superb Cate Blanchett. That's right. Oh, my
God.
Academy Award level superstar. I mean, she was Hela in one of the Marvel movies, but that was funny and sharp, and the performance was great. Tremendous film.
What's the problem here, Michael Snyder?
Well, here she's a hard-nosed interplanetary bounty hunter in a crappy red wig. And I just don't, I guess, Kate gotta eat. But also in the cast, Jamie Lee Curtis, whose work in The Bear has been some of the best of her career. She's here as...
How about her in Everything Everywhere All at Once, or whatever the hell that thing was
Talk
called.
about Oscar level. They're both in this movie, Borderlands.
Well, then how can this not be great, Michael Snyder?
Yeah, wait. There's more. Jack Black is a supporting voice here. He voices a super annoying droid companion. This is a sci-fi thing. It's set on a faraway planet. There's a treasure hunt. And there's also Kevin Hart as a fist-fighting, sharpshooting mercenary who had...
Nice to see Kevin Hart getting some...
Who had Kevin Hart co-stars with Cate Blanchett in a puerile video game-inspired action movie on their Hollywood bingo card. Not me.
Wow.
Not me. I'm not saying that Kevin Hart is an ensemble cast red flag. I mean, he didn't destroy the Jumanji remakes with his frantic yammering, but he's definitely a yellow flag, and this is nowhere near as good as the Jumanji movies. What's even most perplexing is the presence of modern horror maven Eli Roth, the guy who did The Green Inferno.
Did he direct it or what?
Cabin Fever, Hostel, the remake of Death Wish. He's directing and co-authoring this noisy, repetitive, unfunny mishmash.
Wow.
Okay, so let me just give you the deets and then we'll move on.
Okay. Perplexing is a dang word.
I guess so.
Yeah,
A bounty hunter, played by Blanchett, is recruited by a vicious corporate overlord to find his kidnapped adolescent daughter, who is somehow connected to a lost vault of power and knowledge that everybody wants to find. So, yeah, a treasure hunt. Of course, I'd watch Blanchett read a nursery rhyme in Pig Latin, but this isn't even that interesting. The creative larceny includes copying settings and situations from Mad Max,
Larceny is a dang word.
Star Wars, and it's so lazy and blatant that Blanchett's bounty hunter Lilith actually says the classic Danny Glover line from Lethal Weapon about getting too old. I won't continue the line, but you know what it is. It's probably a chicken and egg thing, but the arid, junk-strewn planet where most of the action takes place isn't called Tatooine or Arrakis. It's called Pandora, same as the Na'vi homeworld, Pandora, in those Avatar movies.
Ah, that's kind of interesting. Arid is a ding word.
Blanchett has the pretty crappy bright red wig. I mean, she could be the mother of Lilu, and her name is Lilith, in The Fifth Element. So you get Gina Gershon and Bobby Lee, right? Bobby Lee from Mad TV.
Both of them are in this movie
They
also?
are in this film as well. Gina Gershon is kind of a madam type, you know. Mae West, come up and see me sometime with your space buggy. You know, Lee has scenes with Hart that seem like, I don't know, a bad night backstage at the Comedy Store. Still, when Blanchett and Curtis were on screen, you know, I didn't hate it. I did, however, think that this was a waste of talent, and I understood the benefits to their bank accounts. May they now be free to do mo better projects. It's clearly the name of the shoot-'em-up video game that inspired it, but I'm not sure about the title Borderlands. Then again, I did get Border and Border as it went on. So maybe
I get it.
It's a
Border,
perfect title.
yeah.
I saw it in Dolby, great sound and vision. That just made its failings louder and sharper. It's in theaters, but I don't even think it would appeal to gamers if it was on their consoles. Anyway, let's move on.
Wow, really weren't a fan. It's tough with all that talent.
I know.
That it could miss so completely for you. But go ahead.
It just didn't work. All right. I was so hyped for The Instigators. No, Mark, not the alligators. That was an hour ago. First off, this is a heist movie roiling with criminal activity and also including a comedic element. It stars a guy named Damon and a guy named Affleck, and it's directed by Doug Liman, who has made more than a few favorites of mine, including The Bourne Identity, Swingers, Edge of Tomorrow, and this year's butt-kicking remake of Roadhouse. So,
dude, if this isn't good, I will be astounded.
Damon and Affleck play two types of working-class guys.
Oh,
decent
my God.
ex-military
Please
guy,
tell me this is good.
Rory, and feckless ex-con Cobby, and they're caught
Feckless is a ding word.
They're caught up in robbing the election night party of a corrupt and deeply entrenched Boston mayor. Oh, I forgot to tell you. That's Matt Damon and Casey Affleck, since Ben Affleck, who was a producer on the film, was probably, I don't know, wrapped up in a new divorce proceeding or something.
How dare you bring his personal life into this?
Well,
it's beneath you.
I can't help myself. What a supporting cast. Hong Chow as Rory's VA psychotherapist. Alfred Molina as a baker who was also a mid-level mobster. Michael Stolberg as the the baker's mob boss. Ron Perlman as the amoral mayor. Ving Rhames as a cop in the mayor's pocket. And the great British actor Toby Jones as the mayor's counsel. Wow. Too bad they're let down by a pedestrian script.
Oh, no! You're kidding again? All that pedigree and then...
I wanted zingers, Mark. The comedy was flat. I wanted a nail-biting heist. The excitement level was minimal. Okay. It's certainly not terrible. Like I said, that Matt Damon, Casey Affleck back and forth is enjoyable. They have good chemistry. The banter is still good with brother Casey, same as it is with Ben when Damon works with him. but on the whole, it's kind of perfunctory and short on emotional
Perfunctory
impact
is a dang word.
and thrills when it needed to be tense or rollicking or surprising. In other words, it's nobody's best work. Still, if you have Apple TV, as of today, it's on Apple TV. So, you can make up your own mind. It's not terrible.
Well, you know what? I am making up my own mind. Just I'm picking up that challenge, and I'm going to watch it tonight.
All right.
And I, you know what? If I disagree with you, I intend to send you a very angry text in capital letters.
But remember, I said not terrible. It's going to be on all the posters.
Okay.
Not terrible. Michael Snyder, The Mark Thompson Show. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk Cuckoo. This week's designated horror movie, which actually incorporates mystery and science fiction. It stars Dan Stevens, a fine British actor with masterpiece theater bona fides. He was the aristocratic Matthew Crawley on Downton Abbey.
Oh, yes.
For example. He's also made himself at home with genre work, like starring in Marvel's super hallucinogenic Legion series and co-starring in the very good recent vampire ballerina movie Abigail. In Cuckoo, he plays Mr. Koenig, a solicitous but sinister owner of an alpine resort in Germany, where he is also pursuing his passion as a nature lover in conjunction with a nearby clinic and research team, of course. Yeah, when you hear clinic and it's a horror movie, you start to get a little uneasy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So against her will, Gretchen, a sullen 17-year-old girl played with a delightfully punky sneer by actress Hunter Schafer, is moving from America to a new home in the Alps with her father, stepmother, and her mute stepsister. Dad is employed by Mr. Koenig, who offers Gretchen a job as a clerk at his resort, and she's not crazy about any of this. And she gets even less pleased with her new situation when she starts hearing weird sounds from the woods and seeing odd things around her. Creeping, dread-inducing horror movie stuff. You know what I'm talking about.
Wow.
By the way, you may know Hunter Schafer from Euphoria. Anyway, terrific actress.
Okay.
Anyway, what's Mr. Koenig's interest in Gretchen and her family? That would be telling. In any case, I liked Cuckoo a lot, to a point. Written and directed in very stylish fashion by Tillman Singer, it's freaky and frantic, even if it's not particularly frightening, other than a couple of jump scare moments. My big caveat is that the third act gets confusing in regards to the movie's mythology and the antagonist's ultimate goal, which kind of diminishes its impact. I mean, I didn't mind the weird journey until that point. I just need stories to kind of make sense on their own terms, and that requires efficient world building, which is where Cuckoo fell a bit short. No matter. Stevens whacked out Mr. Koenig was reason enough to get Cuckoo, so to speak.
Wow.
Yeah, it is.
So you kind of liked this one.
I did. It just let me down a little bit in the
But it
third
is
act.
horror.
Of a sort.
Of a sort, but it's not gory horror. It sounds like it's more psychological horror.
Yeah, it is. But there are science fictional elements and mystery aspects to it. So it's not that simple to just say it's a horror movie.
All right.
Okay, let's move on to something a little more grounded. I mean, in a lot of ways. Good One is so simple in its storytelling and so satisfyingly visual and so gratifying in its performances and its execution while addressing complex relationships and feelings. It's a bit of a rarity. I mean, this first feature film, written and directed by India Donaldson, is about a 3-day hiking expedition in the scenic Catskills, undertaken by a professionally successful and somewhat bohemian New Yorker named Chris, with his college-bound 17-year-old daughter Sam and her his longtime friend Matt. Matt is an actor scrambling for roles and dealing with being a single parent after a divorce. And in fact, Matt's son is supposed to join them on the Catskills run, but he bails out, changing the dynamic between the three remaining hikers. And that makes for some very interesting and revealing moments.
So it's Matt, Sam, and who?
Matt, Sam, and Chris.
Okay.
So over the course
Sam
of the trip...
is a woman.
Is a 17-year-old girl. Yeah.
Okay.
Over the course of the trip... I guess it's short for Samantha. Over the course of the trip...
Thank you.
The bonds of friendship fray a little bit. I mean, these guys have been friends for a long time, but clearly they are kind of delicate around one another regarding certain aspects
Sure.
of
I'll
their
ding
lives.
Frey. Frey's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
The trust between father and daughter is broken a little bit. This movie is subtle while being deep, and it's helped by impressive naturalistic performances by Lily Collius as Sam. I'd not seen her before. She's quite good as the kid. That reliable pro, James LeGros as Chris, and Danny McCarthy as Matt. It's in selected theaters. I give a good one high recommendations, high marks. I thought it was well done.
Okay.
It also doesn't. It's not a big, overwhelming film. It's an intimate film on many levels, despite being set in the beautiful territory of the Catskills.
It takes on relationships and complex aspects to those relationships. Isn't that what you said?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
You're standing
totally
by
on
that.
board with that. Yes,
Okay.
that's it.
That is your testimony, sir.
Yes, sir. It is.
What's next?
Directed by James Marsh, Dance First is the largely black and white, time-shifting, slightly surreal biopic about Samuel Beckett, an innovative writer who was eventually honored as a Nobel Prize-winning playwright. As most literary luminaries know, Beckett was the man who wrote the seminal Theater of the Absurd play Waiting for Godot.
Sure, seminal and luminary both, please.
But as Dance First reveals, his life was considerably more than that play. In fact, it was informed by the coldness of his mother, the kindness of his father, his salad days in Paris as an assistant to the beloved and prickly Irish literary legend James Joyce, the guy who wrote Ulysses, among other things. And Beckett also had a risky stint as a member of the French resistance in World War II. And so we learn about a lot of this in Dance First. But as Dance First suggests, he was also an adulterer whose relationships with the opposite sex were problematic.
Oh, please, that's not. With the applause for the adultery. My goodness.
And
I'm sorry,
he
everyone.
was burdened by self-loathing.
Tony, please. I mean, that's very surprising from you.
Thanks, Tony.
Gabriel Byrne is terrific as the elder Beckett. Aidan Gillen is also fine as James Joyce, as are the veteran French actress Sandrine Bonnaire as Beckett's wife Suzanne, and Maxine Peake as his lover and sounding board Barbara Bray. There's kind of a surreal framing device here, courtesy of screenwriter Neil Forsyth, wherein Beckett converses with himself in a strange cross between, I don't know, like a stone cave and a temple of the mind, I guess. No quibbles with the performances, the cinematography, or the direction, but the script never really tells us that much about the nature of his work and how that was impacted by his life. It's all by implication, I guess, but I did learn a lot about Beckett that I did not previously know. And Byrne, Gillen, Bonnaire, and Peake are so good. And that's enough to make the experience of watching Dance First very worthwhile for me. It's in select theaters this weekend and available for streaming next Friday. Dance First.
Very good. Keep going, kid.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze in another
real quick.
film here. Ian Glenn of TV's Game of Thrones and Titans and numerous other dramatic endeavors stars in The Last Front, a pretty decent World War I drama set in and around a Belgian village being overrun by the Kaiser's forces. That would be the Germans. Glenn plays a local farmer named Leonard Lambert, a staunch man determined to protect his daughter and son from the invaders. And meanwhile, the son is involved with a pretty local girl who is the daughter of the rich, snobby town doctor and thus above the farmer boy's station in life. You know, at least that's what Leonard thinks, which causes a little bit of friction there. The relationship, by the way, which is endearing, is going to be the least of Leonard's worries with those nasty Huns on the march.
Yeah.
Back in the day, there was honor in war, and certain rules of decorum followed by gentlemen soldiers, if you will. The commander of the German unit in this movie is old school and somewhat decent in that regard, but to his regret, one of the officers under him is his son, who is a total sadist.
Oh, no.
He's not quite a Nazi, but around a decade or so removed from being in the Reich place at the Reich time. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, my God, do I ever.
Anyway,
I just really don't even know what to...
Oh, my God.
Your clash with Lambert and his family is inevitable. I thought The Last Front, which was written and directed by Julian Hayat Kirknawi, decent of kind, unlike that vicious German officer, not decent at all.
Oh, so you did like it, The Last Front?
I thought it was okay.
Right.
It's not ground shaking, but I thought it was made with a lot of attention to detail and a lot of compassion, and there are emotional elements to it that I was caught up in. It is in select theaters. I just want to say in closing and quickly, because our friend Tim Sika turned me onto it, there is a documentary out now called Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger. And it is riveting, dazzling, and educational. The great filmmaker Martin Scorsese takes us on a journey through a number of the most memorable and classic movies ever made, including The Red Shoes, A Matter of Life and Death, and Black Narcissus, while introducing us to the visionaries who teamed up to make those classics, Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Their relationship, their history, their work is absolutely fascinating, and given its due in Made in England, which is in select theaters. And I think it's going to play very, very well on video, too.
Oh, good, yeah, because I'd like to see it, but I'm not going to the theater to see it. The films of Powell and Pressburger, Made in England, it's called. Riveting and dazzling, says Michael, and informative.
Yeah, man, I love those films. If you've seen A Matter of Life and Death, which was remade as Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty, but the original stars David Niven and Kim Hunter. It's a World War II drama that gets incredibly fantastical, and it's just a fabulous film.
So we'll check it out. Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger. The Last Front with Ian Glenn from Game of Thrones. Plays the local farmer protecting his family from German invasion from the Kaiser armies. And his son, as it turns out, is the real sadist in this film.
Well, not his son, but the son of the Nazi commander. I'm Nazi. Oh, my God. No, they're not Nazis. It's World War I.
No, he's not. But he has the dark heart of a Nazi.
Yeah, he's a proto-Nazi, I think.
Yeah, proto-Nazi. Very good. Anyway, he likes it. The Last Front, it's called, and it is in theaters. Dance First, directed by James Marsh, the biopic about Samuel Beckett with Gabriel Byrne and others. He really liked that. He felt that there was enough in a biographical way, and also you tell a story of, do I use the A word again? A story of adultery. There, I said it. I mean, I'm sorry, Tony, again, with the...
and I have to say, I wasn't over the moon, like I sometimes can be, but I thought it was so much a lovely introduction to Beckett's life, more so than his work, and it was well acted and well shot.
Very nice. So that's, again, that's Dance First.
Yeah, conditional positive for that, and The Last Front.
And good one, Grounded. Complex relationships, feelings with these three people. They're in the wilderness. They're on a 3-day trek of some kind, from what I could tell.
Yeah.
Matt and Sam, the 17-year-old young girl, and Chris. It's directed by James, what is his name? Legros?
No, James Legros is in it, but it's directed by...
Well, who directed it, Michael? I need to know who directed it.
A charming... I assume young woman, maybe not so charming, because she sort of nails this down. The director of this film is India Donaldson, and it is her first movie, and it's
you
so
really
assured.
Liked it, though.
It's so assured. It's actually my favorite film of everything we've talked about, other than the documentary about Powell and Pressburger.
Wow. And then Cuckoo, the teen who moves to the Alps or something. Is that it?
Yeah, she's forcibly relocated from her home in America by her father, her estranged father, and she has to move in with her stepmom.
They live at a resort.
Stepsister.
And the resort is what?
It's kind of haunted. No,
but it's a horror movie.
It's kind of a front for something going on.
For something awful going on, isn't it, Michael?
Something unsettling going on.
All right. Cuckoo is that movie. The Instigators is another film. Matt Damon, Casey Affleck, directed by Doug Liman. It's got Hung Chau in it, Alfred Molina, Ron Perlman, Ving Rhames. How could it miss?
Don't forget Toby Jones. What can I say?
I cannot believe this isn't going to be great, Michael.
Why are you yelling?
Is it possible that you yourself might have been having a bad day when you saw this and don't realize how great a movie this is?
Why are you yelling?
It's just surprisingly drab compared to all the firepower there.
All right, drab's a ding word. That's The Instigators. Anyway, It'll be on Apple TV this weekend. Borderlands is the first movie that Michael started with, and It's another adaptation of a video game property. Cate Blanchett, Jamie Lee Curtis, Jack Black, Kevin Hart, Gina Gershon, and Bobby Lee, directed by Eli Roth. How is this not the greatest movie ever?
Why are you yelling? It just isn't. And that wig, Kate, my God, you should really talk to your hair and makeup people.
I'm disgusted that you're disgusted. Your disgustingness has actually rubbed off onto my being disgusted.
Well, you know, I occasionally find a film to rave about, and that just isn't one of them.
Borderlands, again, with all of those great people, is in theaters. But, Michael, you've left us a couple of nuggets. You've left the, I thought Dance First is a nugget.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Revealing.
And Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger, real nugget.
Right.
And
good one, a lovely
good one. You liked it.
Personality profile.
Yeah, for a first film.
And Cuckoo, for 2/3 of it, pretty cool. So it's not all bad, but
okay.
You know.
We may check it out. Michael, we'll check out your stuff at The Voice of San Francisco.
Yeah, thevoicesf.org. An article coming up shortly about a couple of TV shows we've discussed here on the air, the Decameron and also A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, both of which I enjoyed immensely. We do a little piece on them. And there's other things in the archive, including something about the corporate machinations of the guy over at Max and Warner Brothers Discovery. So
yeah, machinations is a thing. Yeah, I'm seeing with Courtney, we've been watching Sunny, which is the Apple TV thing. It's a series with
Rashida Jones. Right?
Rashida Jones, and I think you recommended it.
I enjoyed the first season.
Yeah. Gosh, it's hard to believe I have to make it through another season. There are just so many seasons of these shows.
You know, it's a season in the sun when it's good, and it's a season of rain and misery when it's not.
He comes and goes on a rainbow. Who can't love him? The great Michael Snyder,
Go
everybody.
Giants! Big reunion of the 2014 World Series championship team at Oracle Park tonight.
Yes, right on, Michael Snyder.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow. All kinds of love for Michael Snyder in the chat. I noticed that during our chat with Michael Snyder, Kim red carded somebody.
No, I had to, yeah.
And now, this is interesting because I didn't realize something that went on here. I was going to bring it up because I guess there's some pushback on people who talk in all caps in the chat. Now, is that not allowed, Kim?
No, that's a rule. Don't do it. It's yelling. It's rude.
Why is that?
If you not only type in all caps, but then you don't add anything to the conversation and your whole point is to stir up trouble, and you're typing in all caps.
Well, what was the person stirring
Sayonara.
up trouble? I only saw one or two of their posts. I didn't think it was so bad.
Annoying. It's bad.
Was it? All right. I mean, it's too late for me to even review it because you have thrown them out of the chat.
Done.
But Kim is very tough, and I'll just review for you. I tend to be very lenient. She tends to be very tough.
I give you some chances. You get chances.
So did you give that person a chance?
Well, I didn't say you've been warned, but
well, no, that's what a yellow card is. A yellow card is a chance.
Posts.
It's a warning.
Like if 5 or 6 posts that are just no, you're out.
All right. Well,
not just one post. I'm not just two posts. Repeated offenses.
All right. I'm not going to debate it because, as I say, I don't have the information. It went on and got nasty, says Karen Cooper. So she is backing you up on that.
Yeah.
Shout out to Heather Kennedy, who we did bestow the Rod of Equity and Mercy upon.
Hey.
And she says it's customary to contribute to the Rod's endowment fund, I believe. What an honor. Heather Kennedy.
Big shout out.
Winner of today's Shawshank Redemption trivia question. Thank you. Scott Rittenberg for a 10 spot.
Big shout
out says, Hail Heather Kennedy, queen of old people radio. Bust a move, Heather. Yeah. I think everything else I have gotten to, and we're over time. So with that said, I did want to kind of wrap up, but I also wanted to acknowledge one of the first communications we got today, and that's from Tess. Again, 4 months since the triple bypass open heart surgery. Tess is doing well. Back to teaching as an aquafit instructor in just 2 months' time. So grateful for the Mark Thompson Show. Happy Friday. Yeah. We're so happy for you and happy for your success. Wow, that was a loud applause. But that's how loudly we support you. So thank you. Everyone, thank you for sharing the show and supporting us in all the ways you do. You increase our footprint. So when you share a short or you share a video or you share a link to the live show, which is usually watched by most people when it's not live, but it's recorded, that helps, as I say, increase our reach. So thank you for all those ways of helping us out. Now, next week,
Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We focus on Georgia and the ways in which voters are being disenfranchised there. That's happening next week. Until then, bye-bye.